start with some introductions. I am Deborah. I started Solo in Style a few years ago for solo female travelers. I am very interested, like all of you, to learn about house sitting, as I haven't done any of that myself. So I'm really thrilled to have Lamia Walker and Kelly Hayes-Raitt join tonight. These are two experts in house sitting. And so this is an open forum for us to chat about all things house sitting. Ask your questions in the chat box, if you wouldn't mind, at the bottom of the screen. And maybe if we could start, Kelly, would like to introduce yourself and say hello?
Sure. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for pulling this together. I've really had a fun time interacting with your members in your group over the last week as we were talking about this. And thank you all for joining us too. It's exciting to see so many people from the States. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from the United States as well, but I've recently relocated to Lisbon, Portugal. Very excited to be here. And this was after 12 years of full-time traveling as a house sitter. And I've house sat in 22 different countries for countless number of dogs and cats and rabbits and fish. And I have lots of wonderful tips and stories to share, and I'm really eager to hear your questions. So thanks for including me.
Oh, you're very welcome. We can't wait to hear it. And Lamia, you're there. I can see, I can't see you on the screen yet. Are you?
I'm here. Yes, absolutely. Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
And hello, everyone else. So my name is Lamia Walker. I run one of the house sitting and pet sitting international websites. I started HouseSit Match about 9 years ago, based on the idea that a friend and I had together. She had been house sitting in Australia and had saved a year's rent in central Perth, living in a beautiful home. And she was telling me all about this experience and saying, I'm going to start an agency. And I said, well, you know what? I think we should do this together, and I think we should do it online. And, from that, an idea was born. We researched a name, looked up the competition, thought we could do better. So I've been running HouseSit Match now. It's a family-run business based in the UK, but we have house sits all over the UK, all over Europe, and some further afield. And we love to welcome new members, whether you are homeowners, pet owners, or house sitters and pet sitters. So come on down. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you so much. And I can see we've got lots of ladies saying hello in the chat, mainly from the States. Could you spell your name, Lamia Walker? We don't see your name on the screen, and that's a question. So, Lamia is are you going to write it in the chat? Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And the more questions you have, and somebody from Auckland, New Zealand is brilliant. So let's get going. So I think a really obvious place to start is really kind of to ask you where you got started and how you got started. So maybe starting with you, Kelly, would you like to sort of kick that one off?
Sure. Well, I know, Deborah, you and I have talked about kind of what jumpstarts people into solo traveling, and it's usually some major loss or transition in our lives. And for me, it was a campaign. I'd been a political activist in California for 25 years, working on statewide campaigns to protect the environment and women's rights and our civil justice system. And then I decided to run for office myself, and I got my butt kicked and decided I needed to do something else. So as one does, I became a house sitter. I started working, actually, it's a little longer than that, but I started going to the Middle East quite a bit and working with refugees and doing some writing. And I realized that I needed quiet places to write. And so house sitting really fit the bill for me. And I joined a couple of different house sitting platforms and became an international house sitter. And I just loved the lifestyle so much that I did it full time for 12 years, right before the pandemic. In fact, I house sat through the pandemic. That's what saved me during the pandemic, were house sits. So it's been quite an experience for me. And as I mentioned, I've just in the past year decided to relocate to Lisbon, which is where I am right now. But I'm continuing to house sit throughout Europe and throughout Portugal, and really just love it. So that's how I got started.
Thank you. And Lamia, what about you?
Well, when my family, we were not originally from Britain. We moved from Africa. We were refugees, as it happens. But we moved to Britain, and actually my parents in the holidays ended up looking after other people's homes and pets. So we were kind of informally house sitting before it was a thing. And then years later, I was the kid in the neighborhood you'd ask to look after your guinea pigs and your rabbits while you were on holiday, and the cats and the dogs. And so it was me. So it was kind of a natural thing. I always loved animals, and I had kittens and puppies myself. So it was a very natural thing. So when my friend had this idea, it just seemed like the perfect thing, really. It just slotted into place. It felt natural.
Right.
So that's how I started.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, I know you've got lots of stories that you can share about house sits that you've done. But I mean, one of the things that when I was thinking about it myself was understanding sort of how does it actually work? So if I wanted to become a house sitter, where would I start? What would you recommend?
Well, I usually recommend that people start locally and try to keep as many of the factors that are out there when we travel to a minimum. So I recommend that you start locally so that you're already familiar with the neighborhood, familiar with the area, or at least start in your own country so that you're familiar with the mores and the language, or start with people that you know. That's just a great way to start getting experience and also to start getting references, because the references are really important. But I think the most important thing about that is to start learning what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Because not every house sit is going to work for you, and some are going to be just absolutely perfect. And so it's really kind of a self-awareness opportunity to find out what are the kinds of things that make a good house sit tick for you, and what are the things that you just won't put up with.
Right. And so, I mean, that's a really good point. So as you're starting to think about it then and starting to look at doing your first, what are some of those things that you would consider that would work for you and wouldn't? I mean, I know this morning we were talking to some ladies, things like location,
right?
How many what animals there are, lots of things. I mean, Lamia, what kind of things would you think that we should all be looking at?
I think, I said that when I was a child, I was the pet-friendly kid in the neighborhood. If you like particular pets, then they're the house sits to start with. Right. And, don't put yourself up for a Great Dane if actually you've never looked after a dog before. Choose carefully, choose wisely. But another point to note, and this may sound a little obvious, but do you know what? Joining a house-sitting platform is actually a good idea, because platforms, certainly like HouseSit Match, I make a huge effort to help guide newbies. We recommend that not only do you do our obligatory ID check, which everybody has to do for safety and security of the site, but we also recommend that you do a police and background check and you build a good profile, and we can help you do that. We have all kinds of advice. And we know most of the members. So if you want questions answered about a particular house sit, we may have been there. We probably know what's going on in the house with the pets and how far they are from the beach. So, it's worth joining a platform just to have a discussion and learn more about how it's done.
But Lamia, you do more than ID check the sitters. You ID check the homeowners as well, which makes it safer for sitters, which is one of the reasons why I really love your site in particular. There are some 50 different house sitting platforms out there. Some are country specific, some are lifestyle specific. There's a really big one that I'm not going to talk about because it's become quite problematic. My preference is the smaller, family-run, more boutique house sitting sites, because I get great customer service, and that's something that you just can't put a value on.
Right.
It's just incredible. And I also like the house sits that come through the platforms, because it means that the homeowners have taken some time to think about what they need, and they're not just putting a post up on some expat group somewhere.
Right.
They're really taking the time to consider it. So I think starting with the platforms is definitely a huge tip.
Yeah, and we've just got a first question, which is there a free to join house sitting platform? I don't know the answer to that. Would you know if there is? And I guess people pay a fee to join a platform that does the checks and has those customer service points in place and has the sort of support. So
yes, every single site has requires the house sitter to pay to join. Some of the sites have freebies for homeowners, which is, I think, a little uneven. But Lamia, you can talk about HouseSit Match and how your fee structure works.
Well, we have a fairly low bar for fee structure. So we in British pounds, we charge £69 per year for homeowners and house sitters for a standard membership. Now, that's not a huge amount of money when you think it's a whole year, and you could actually get several weeks of free accommodation and make new friends in the process. A premium account is £89. So in translating that into dollars, £69 would be about $85, and £89 would be about $110, I think, at current exchange rates. Of course, there are sometimes special discount codes, and Deborah has a special one for you.
We have one which we'll share at the end for everybody who wants to join, which will give 25% off your first year membership, which is great. So we can all access this much more easily. And there are a couple of questions coming up, which we'll get to in a minute, about the different sites. But I think one of the things that is so important, I think, as you're starting, first of all, is look, just the kind of the checks and balances for one, but things like insurance. Do I need insurance? Am I insured in the house? Will I get a car? How do I travel around? Do I need to have some kind of contract between myself and the person that I'm house sitting for? So obviously that, I guess that comes through your platform, through HouseSit Match.
Well, in terms of, let's start with one of the questions, insurance. So we always recommend you take travel insurance, even if you are just going out of state. It's really important because you'll have electronic devices you want covered.
Right.
That kind of thing is really, you need to look after yourself. In terms of the property and the pets, well, the homeowner will more than likely have pet insurance. And so all the costs for the pet should be covered by the pet owner. In terms of anything that happens to the house or the car, if you happen to be using their vehicle, then again, they should cover that in the home insurance and the car insurance. So that's one of the questions hopefully answered.
It is, yes. And I know we talked a little bit this morning about, Kelly, you mentioned this, about you have a document that you send anyway to the person who you're sitting for, so that they can give you a full briefing of where they are, of the place that you are going to be in.
Yeah, let's go through the process. Let's just back up and go through the process a little bit. So, so just to put this in perspective, the house sitting that we're talking about is a free exchange. So when I'm doing this kind of international house sitting, I don't get paid for it. I pay my way to go, and my living accommodations are covered, except for my personal expenses like food and transportation and so forth. And what the homeowner gets is someone that they know they can trust to take care of their home and their pets and their plans. So it's a really beautiful, fair exchange. I choose not to get paid when I'm doing this because I don't want to have to deal with visa issues and getting a work visa if I'm going to another country. Another model, though, is to get paid. I am house sitting here in Portugal, and I do get paid by people who, so it is possible to do both kinds of things. Lamia's site, HouseSit Match, is all barter. There's no money exchange that takes place. And that's the way that most of the house sitting platforms are set up. So step number one is to research and find the kind of house sitting platform you want. Somebody asked a question about, are the platforms regional or location based? Some of them are. I've been a member of HouseSit Mexico, for example, for years, because I was going back and forth to Mexico and house sitting there. Should I be looking at a local platform because they would have more local opportunities? Yes. Not only will they have more opportunities, they will have less competition and probably better customer service because it would be a smaller kind of platform. I like international house sitting, so I really like HouseSit Match because Lamia has a lot of house sits throughout Europe, primarily in Spain and France and the UK, three countries I just love to visit. So that's the step one, is to research and find the kind of profile, find the platform you want, join, set up a really great profile, photos of you with animals, photos of you smiling, not photos of you drinking. You'd be surprised. It's like I've seen some of those profiles. And then put in a good description on what your experience is as a homeowner, as a pet owner, as a sitter, if you've done it in other parts of the world or other places, but just basically what you bring to the table. Then the next step is to just look at the house sits that are available. One of the things that Lamia does that I really like is she sends out a regular e-newsletter a couple of times a week that lists all the new house sits. And even if you don't want to join trusted any of the house sit platforms, if you don't want to join HouseSit Match, just sign up for her free e-newsletter, because it's so yummy to just get that. And it's such a tease to see all of the great content and great house sits that are available around the world. And it's free to join the newsletter list. So once you find a house sit that you like, send in a great message. The messaging usually happens through the platform, so everybody's safe in that regard. But put together a really good cover letter that explains why you want that particular house sit and what you have to offer. It's kind of like a job
Applying for a
interview,
job,
right? It's like that kind of thing. And then if the homeowner is interested in communicating with you, they'll get back to you. I always, and I've regretted it when I haven't, set up a video conference with a person so that we can interview each other. But more importantly, what that does is it gives me an opportunity to ask questions more specifically about the animal care. It gives me a chance to see the house. I ask them to do a little video tour of their home so that I can see things like, are there a bunch of ashtrays sitting around? Are the cats up on the kitchen counters, which personally doesn't bother me, but would bother other people? How cluttered is the home looking, which would give me an indication of perhaps the level of housekeeping that takes place. So it's just an opportunity to get more information. And this is the stage, just like anything else, where you'd want to gather as much information as you possibly can. Do you get along with a homeowner? Do you have the right kind of communication style with each other? So that happens in the video call. Then the next step is for the homeowner to make a decision, because they're probably interviewing a few people. Once they choose me, I have an agreement that I send out that's 7 pages. It's all about all the quirky things in their home, about their neighbors, about their neighborhood, about their pets, of course, and what the pet needs are, where the pet sleeps, what kind of behaviors do I have to watch out for with a pet that would trigger a problem? How often do the homeowners want to be communicated with while they're on holiday? Things like that. And I ask that they fill that out completely and send that back to me before the trip so that I have a chance to look it over. And then I have everything in writing that I need so that I could respond to any issues that might come up. And it's, so everything from Wi-Fi to how do you work the TV to
all
where
those
the pet sleep, right?
Yeah. If you can often take for granted, but when you're actually in the moment, it's really good to have it written there so that you can just reference it. And that's great. Thank you for going through that. And I think that really puts it into perspective, like the process of how you do it. And maybe we can just jump to a few questions, because I'm aware that we're getting quite a few. So a couple of people would like you to name the problematic sites that you would avoid.
Yeah, sorry. I don't want to get sued.
Okay.
But I can tell you this, if you Google house sitting, it will come up at the top because they spend a lot of money.
I think it's one that comes up a lot in the Facebook group, in Solo Install Facebook group. You mentioned that there are regional platforms, so that's all great. One question, Roberta, which is for you, Lamia, what's the difference between regular membership and premium membership?
So the standard membership is a small advert. You get 150 words, whether you're a homeowner or a house sitter, and you get 2 or 3 photographs. As a homeowner, you can post 1 live advert at a time. If you're on a premium account, your profile is much bigger and more prominent. So for another £20 or $30, you get 800 words, 9 photographs, a video, and as a homeowner, you can publish up to 3 live adverts and up to 3 addresses with 3 live adverts at any one time. So the premium is a pretty good deal, really. But standard is a good way to get on board and just test it out. I just want to add one thing, if I may, to Kelly's comment about the document. We HouseSit Match make those documents available to everyone. We have a very similar document for homeowners and house sitters to use together as an agreement. We have a generic agreement, which is a lightweight but detailed enough document to sort of make sure you are all on the same page regarding dates, the care that's involved, emergency numbers, and so on. But we also have a house document. We call it the HouseSit guidelines, and that's the sort of 10-page document with, this is how you look after the swimming pool, this is how you turn off the electricity, this is how you turn off the water, all of that kind of stuff. The electrician's number, the emergency vet's number, and so on. So we make all those documents available to active members.
Right. And I'm sure if there was a question, that's one of the aspects of your service, customer service, they can come through you and you can provide
Absolutely
help for them. So just kind of looking down the messages, there's some great, the questions, there's some great ones. One good question is about security. Can you speak to the security issues like cameras inside the house or neighbors or people who have house keys?
I can speak to that if that's all right. So in terms of security, the cameras inside the house, that is quite a topical issue. It's quite controversial. Yeah. We ask our homeowners to make that public. Make sure that people know that there are cameras. We've only ever had a couple of instances where house sitters noticed cameras that had not been mentioned. And the homeowners turned off the cameras remotely. So, it's because they had actually forgotten. They just had cameras in the dining room they hadn't noticed, or in the library, or whatever happened to be. The other thing is, in terms of neighbors, getting to know the neighbors is a very good thing. And neighbors often also have spare keys, which in my experience is a very good thing if the door gets stuck. So, it's neighbors are vital, extra keys are vital, and honesty between the homeowner and the house sitter, especially regarding cameras, internal and external.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. No,
yeah, if I could add on to that, I think the security issue kind of cuts both ways, right? Like, I feel that house sitting is a more secure way of traveling. I feel safer when I'm house sitting as a solo woman, rather than staying in, kind of dicey areas in a city where there might be a lot of scammers or pickpockets or something. In my video conversation, that's one of the questions that I ask people: do you have any internal and external cameras? And would they be willing to turn them off? Some people aren't willing to turn them off. And there are some house sitters that are perfectly okay with living in a home with security cameras. Personally, I'm not one of them, but there are others that are fine with it. There's a lot of house sitters out there. I also ask homeowners if they have weapons in their house.
Oh, wow. You see that? Yeah. You see, that would never even cross my mind, being British.
Yeah,
well, right. But yeah. I've house sat in third world countries where there have been unlocked loaded guns, and I'm not comfortable with that, and I wouldn't take that house sit either. No. So it's really a matter of, thinking about all of the different kinds of factors, just as you would if you're planning a regular holiday, right? Like, do you want something rural, or you want a city? How much responsibility do you want with the house in exchange for this free accommodation that you're getting? I know I hate to always say this, Deborah, but we're going to talk about my book later. But in my book, I have a chapter that's a questionnaire: is house sitting right for me? And it's not meant as a way to discourage people from house sitting. It's meant as a way to find out what's most important to you. Yeah. Quiet versus noise, access to public transportation versus access to a car. And that will be different for every person, and it will be different for every person at every time, right? Like, I think it's really important to think about what your goal is in the vacation that you want to take. Right. Do you want to retreat, or are you visiting your grandchildren and don't want to be underfoot in your adult children's home? Yeah. Right. So all of those different kinds of house sitting just provides so many different opportunities.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because I had actually really only thought about house sitting as a way to take vacation. But there are so many other ways that you can, great ways that we talked about this morning, like the ones you just mentioned, like if you're visiting family and you don't want to stay, in the home, and lots of different ways that you can use house sitting. And I think perfect for our group, which is, solo female travel. But one question that does come up is, can you take somebody with you, or do you have to go on your own? And I don't know if you can talk to that.
Sure. I've been a solo house sitter for so long, but, occasionally I've had someone come and stay with me, but I ask the homeowner first to make sure that that's okay. I'm about to do a house sit in right outside of Paris next month for a week, and it's a 4-bedroom house, and the couple said it was absolutely fine if I had a girlfriend come and stay with me, and then we can head into Paris and explore. So that's definitely possible.
Yeah, fabulous. So there's great questions coming in. We probably take this as one question. What do you love about house sitting, and what's the longest time you have sat in one home? So maybe for both of you, I think that's, if you,
Lamia, you want to grab that one first?
If you have,
sure.
Have something to share, yeah.
The house sitting, I think, for anyone who who loves the idea of discovering new places. And it doesn't have to be world travel. It could be around the corner. But discovering, for me, that's the most exciting thing, to discover a new neighborhood, new people, new ways of doing things. And if I can discover some new historical sites, for me, that just hits all the buttons. But I love meeting people in our network. You know, I have a huge network of friends. It feels like I've got this amazing network of friends. So for me, that's the love of it, is travel, but it's not always global. It can be just literally discovering new corners of my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so in terms of the longest, in terms of the longest, I house sat for 2 months once. So because I'm running a business, it's hard to kind of go off piste for a while. So 2 months is the longest I've house sat.
Yeah.
So the longest house sat I had was in Ajijic, Mexico, which is an expat community just south of Guadalajara, for 10 years. I was there every spring and fall for 10 years. So 2 or 3 months in the spring, and then 4 or 5 months in the autumn and winter. For the same family, the same dog. I love that dog. And it was just great. I mean, I really became family. I was part of the family, and I was with the dog more than the homeowners were with the dog. Actually, it was their vacation rental. So they had a rescue dog, and that's who I took care of. In terms of what I love about house sitting, how much time do we have, Deborah?
Yeah, I know you're passionate about this. You have lots of information to share. Yeah.
I think what I like most about it, besides the pets, is I like being dropped into a foreign place, into something familiar. So it's somebody I've already met, maybe not in person, but met over Zoom and communicated with. I've had a chance to get their tips on what they like to do in their community. So some of the research is done for me. And I usually ask my homeowners to introduce me to one of their neighbors or a friend that I could go have a glass of wine with, or go on a hike with, or something like that. So I have like a ready-made friend when I'm there. And for me, that's just such an authentic way to travel. And it's slow travel. I don't have to go out sightseeing every day. It's not like when I'm paying for a hotel and I feel like I need to justify it and leave the room.
Mm-hmm.
I can hang out and write and play with the dogs or the cats, and it's just it's a nice way. It's a nicer way. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. Totally.
Deborah, there's a question I'd like to answer, if that's all right.
Yeah, please do.
There was a lady who was asking about her son who joins
that's the next one. Yeah.
Yeah, who joins the large network that we're not going to
it's written right there, trusted house.
So now I've had situations like this where single males especially have contacted me and said, look, I've paid for membership on this site, why should I join you? And I say to them, well, I'll help you build a profile that brings the best out of your personality or experience, which will put the best foot forward. And also, I happen to know the homeowners, so I know the situation. And if you convince me, I can convince them to give you the first house sit. And I have one example. Actually, he was an Icelandic security guard who approached me. He was turning 60, and he said, I'm going to retire in a few years, and I never want to spend another winter in Iceland. Make it happen. So basically, he had already paid hundreds of pounds and dollars for 3 other websites and had had no success for 6 months. We built him a profile. I had some homeowners in Spain who were well connected, had some high value items in their home, and but they were hesitant because he was a single male. Why does he want to travel on his own? They didn't understand that. So I said to him, look, he's a security guard. He is checked beyond any teacher and doctor. He's put into these high sort of tested situations. You can trust him. And what's more, he was a shepherd in the summers, so he loves animals. And so he had the best combination. So he went from one long-term house sit in Spain every winter to another. And there's one fabulous story, if I may just extend this one more time. So one of the many long-term house sits he took in Marbella in Spain, please, for 3 months at a time, in the winter, connected him to another one of our members who happened to be a minor member of the European royalty. And she and her husband had one of their homes on a golf course in Marbella, fabulous place. And the only reason they came to us was because they couldn't find, the butler wouldn't look after the dogs. And so they needed someone to walk and feed the dogs. So Braggy, I must mention his name, who is the house sitter in question, on his 5th gig, I think, was sitting in the Contessa's house on the golf course, looking after these dogs, and was being fed by the butler. So there you go. You never know what you'll find on the house sit.
Well, and that was because of your personal touch, right?
And I was just about to say that's exactly it. You can really help build, because it is that. How do you just get your foot on the ladder? And you mentioned it originally, Kelly, about building a an introduction and a profile that includes everything. But that helping leg up, I'm sure, is fabulous, fantastic. Yeah. So, we've got so many questions. So let's just keep going, if that's okay. And this is a question I had in my mind. Are there people who do this if they don't have pets? And that was a question that was always in the back of my mind. Do you have to look after pets as a house sitter?
I think 89% of the house sits are all about the pets.
Right.
However, we do have the occasional one where it's about looking after the garden or the property in the owner's absence. So if you're a keen gardener, you have something to offer.
Right.
Don't undermine that. And we can bring that out in your profile. But most of them are about the pets. So we have to be real about that. I have had people approach me and say, well, I can't stand animals. Well, let's be real. I might get one that's appropriate, but let's be honest.
Well, and it's all back, isn't it? To being honest, Kelly, I can see you're about to jump in and say the same thing. There's no point pretending that you're going to love it if you're not. So
right. I mean, why spend all that money and time to get there only to be stuck in a house sit that you find miserable? So it really needs to be a good, fair exchange on both sides. And I will say that of all the sits I've done, there's only been one that didn't have an animal.
Right.
So in all the dozens and dozens of sits that I've done,
so moving on, how far in advance do most homeowners begin looking for a house sitter? That's a great question.
Great question. Yeah, that is a great question. It really depends on the homeowner. I mean, most of the time they're looking for probably 3 to 4 to 5 months away. Lamia, you'll probably have a better sense of that. But sometimes, things happen quickly and people need a last minute sitter. When I was house sitting full time, I needed to be able to plan my calendar far in advance. And I really liked homeowners that were organized enough to be able to look, they had their plans set. They weren't just flying by the seat of their pants. But that said, sometimes I did take last minute sits that kind of filled a little gap somewhere. So.
Yeah, I find that it's the homeowners who are new to this, who come thinking, oh, I'll find someone in 2 weeks. Well, that's not always the case. So if you are a homeowner on this particular webinar thinking, well, maybe I need someone, maybe I don't. Do you know what? You need to join a website, you need to build your profile, and then start planning ahead. It's the best chance, because if you give us 2 to 3 months notice, we will give you a good crop of options. It's just, you need to prepare to make it easier for everybody.
Right. And I think, I'm certainly hearing the more you check everything out, the more you prepare, the more you research, the better the experience is for everybody. And to that point, one question is to you, Kelly. Once you've read the responses to your questionnaire, have you ever opted not to house sit?
That is a fantastic question. I saw that pop through. I don't think there has been a time that I've opted not to. I have done some video calls with people and opted that not to sit for them for, whatever reason. It just, we didn't feel like we were a good fit. But by the time I send them my questionnaire and they fill it out, I haven't found anything really glaring that they've revealed that we hadn't already talked about. But that was a really good question.
Yeah. Is the homeowner usually there when you arrive? That's also good. And we touched on that a little bit this morning about being met at the airport sometimes, and depending on where you're traveling from.
Right. Yeah. Most of the time the homeowners want me to arrive a day early so that they can show me the quirks in the house and the pet's routine and so forth. But it kind of depends, right? They have to have a place for me to sleep. So I tend to do not the big rural estates like Bragi does, because that's not my style. I prefer to do a cat in a flat in a city.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I think that's
and
probably more me too.
right. And so that means that, people usually don't have places for me to sleep. And so there's one couple in Brighton who, oh God, it's such a great house that I love it. It's like 3 blocks from the beach in Brighton, just south of London. 2 gorgeous cats. And I've had set for this couple 4 times and I've never met them in person.
Right.
So it just can depend. But
yeah.
there are other homeowners who ask me to come 2 or 3 days beforehand or stay a few days afterwards because we've gotten to know each other so well and they want to hang out with me.
Right.
And I want to hang out with them, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. So this is one for you, Lamia, I think probably. If somebody had some disabilities or some health conditions that you didn't feel would interfere with the house sit, would you need to disclose them?
I think it's best to disclose them. I have, for example, a chap who's a double amputee who lives in Spain. He lives entirely on his own. He used to be a super yacht captain, but had some issues with diabetes. Anyway, so he always puts on his profile and the application that he's a double amputee. And there are some houses that are just not suitable because they have, maybe it's a Victorian cottage with steep, narrow stairs and so on. So I think honesty is the best policy, but that doesn't stop him from getting gigs.
Right.
He still gets the occasional house sit and that suits him just fine, but he's honest and open about it. So I think it's best to be straight.
I think, yes. I mean, but I live by that whole mantra anyway. So I always feel like I disclose things. When sitting, are you allowed to go away for a night or a weekend, depending, of course, if the pets are involved is a question, but I guess if you're taking the pets with you, not leaving them on their own in the house sit, I guess.
Well, that came up recently. Actually, we had a lovely dog actually in my hometown, and the house sit was for 3.5 weeks. And the house sitter said, "Look, I want to go and visit my brother in a town an hour away. Can I take the dog with me?" And the owner said, "Yeah, that's fine. As long as it's not the first week, let the dog get used to you. We don't mind if you take the dog away for a night." But they didn't want her going away for 2 weeks. That's not the point. Is she's supposed to be in the house, looking after the dog and the house. But the occasional night, as long as it's with the agreement, I think as a platform owner, I would say as long as you're in agreement and everyone is clear about it, then it should be fine.
Yeah, I would say that 99% of the time I'm asked to be in the home overnight. But there was, one Christmas when I was in London and I was taking care of a cat and I asked the homeowner if I could not be there Christmas Eve. And she said that was fine. I mean, it was a cat. They go away and leave the cat overnight. So they said that was fine for one night. Yeah. So it just depends on the situation. I think you just ask.
And so we're getting into the nitty gritty here, which is really good. So how much time do you spend daily with your house sitting chores? I guess it would depend on your house sit and what you're expected to do.
That can range. I've had some homeowners, I've seen some homeowners posting for farm stays where it could be a couple of hours worth of work. That is not for me. Again, city girl, cat in a flat. Right. Sometimes I have house sat for puppies that needed 4 or 5 walks a day. And so that cut into, I had to really think about that, right? Am I here to sightsee or am I here to do some writing? And having the puppy walks is a great way to get my butt off the chair for a little while. Right. But that was more time consuming. So it just really depends on the homeowner's needs. And that's a great question to ask during the video conference, actually, is how much time do you anticipate these chores taking? Yeah.
There's lots of love for your 7-page document and people asking if you want to do that, but I guess that's going to be in your book. We'll show your book at the end and then people can decide if they would like to kind of get that, to get access to all of that. Somebody's also asking about I think it's about your security guard chap from Iceland, if he's available for a cat sitting.
Well, you might be. Perhaps if you join our website, I can put you two together.
Yeah. So here's a great question. What if you have your own small dog and want to take it with you? Is that doable?
I do have house sitters who travel with their dogs. I mean, it's a surprising number. I have a vet who joined from Israel and she travels everywhere. She will not be parted from this little Chihuahua who apparently hikes with her for 20 miles a day, which is hard to imagine, but apparently it happens. Anyway, so she has managed to find a house sit in Spain where they will take the dog, and she's moving to Europe, which is why she and the dog are kit and caboodle are on the road.
Right.
But then I have house sitters in the UK who travel with their dogs. I have a British house sitter who takes her dog to Italy and France on a regular basis. So it does happen. I don't think you can expect it to happen. I think it's utterly at the discretion of the homeowner.
Right.
But again, I know the homeowners who are happy to allow somebody and their dog into the home. And there is a protocol, to get to know the animals and so on. And we have blogs about that kind of stuff, the best way to approach it.
Yeah, that's one thing, just on a side note about what I found so great joining HouseSit Match is the information that you're sending through. It's not overwhelming at all, but it's just so interesting. And it's regular, really very, relevant tips and tricks and hints and things. It's fantastic, and I always look forward to reading them because there's some great stuff that's being shared, which I think is really, really helpful for me as a first time house sitter. It very, very useful information. Back to sort of your whole ethos on building a community, I think is what I'm hearing from the
absolutely
way
absolutely. And we love to hear the house sitter stories, because really that's how we're learning. Because even though this has been around since 2000, I think the first formal house sitting site came about, it's still only 20 odd years.
Right.
It's a new thing, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So we love to share the house sitter stories.
Deborah, I just wanted to give a different response on the can I travel with my dog?
Oh yeah, please do.
Yeah, I mean, part of the time when I was traveling full time, I had my house in Santa Monica, California, and I had a cat there. And I would have house sitters come and stay in my home and take care of my cat while I was traveling elsewhere and house sitting. So I think, there's different options for pet owners to be able to do this. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. You can just kind of do a kind of an exchange, or you can maybe take your dog with you. So, yeah. So 2 questions that are pretty much the same. Do any gigs fall through after you've bought tickets? And what happens if a homeowner cancels at the last minute and you've already bought your plane ticket?
Yeah, you're kind of screwed. That's happened to me twice. And I had no help from the big site we shall not name. But I'm sure if something like that happened on Lamia's site, she would be right there to help. So for me, one experience was in Dublin. I had already bought my ticket. I was actually en route, and I got a text. Actually, I wasn't en route on that one. I was still in Santa Monica, and I got a text from the woman that she was going to have to take her cat in and have the cat put down, which was very sad. We had talked about that as a possibility before I accepted the gig. I said, I want to bring up this really difficult, sensitive question. If something happens to the cat before your trip, are you still going to take the trip? Would you still need a sitter? And she said yes, that she'd been planning this trip for a long time and she would still want somebody in her home to take care of her plants. But, I don't know what happened in the 24 hours between us talking about her cat going in and my getting on the plane, but she decided she wanted to cancel. So I went to Dublin anyway and made other arrangements, and then got was able to scramble and find a last minute house sit in London. So that worked. The second time it happened to me, I was en route to Vietnam. I was actually in Vietnam, and the woman canceled a month-long house sit at the very last minute. And I just had to work my network to find a replacement sit. Find something else. It can happen. But I want to put this in perspective. I house sat full time for 12 years, and it happened twice. Yeah. So it's very rare. I do hear situations where house sitters have canceled on homeowners at the last minute, which is equally egregious, right? So I've taken some house sits where homeowners have gone, they just canceled, and it's just horrible. So I think it's really important for everybody to realize that this trust bond that happens is happening on a lot of different levels, and that includes showing up and following through on both sides. Right.
And of course that builds your profile, and that builds your credibility and your expertise, and
I think you're both right there. Absolutely. If I can just say, in 9 years of running HouseSit Match, it's happened a few times, but not that often. It's everyone's big fear. You're going to spend money on a plane ticket and so on. But I mean, if you can afford it, get a flexible ticket. That's the first advice. Secondly, make sure you come a day or so early so that you are already in situ and you can handle the situation. Where it's happened to a couple of house sitters, where the homeowners said, look, our situation has changed last minute. I have had to pay for an Airbnb for a couple of nights for somebody. I paid for a bus ticket so they could get to their next destination. So, we do support where we can. Normally, there's a way to facilitate. Another homeowner had to cancel because sadly, the 2 dogs died, sadly, within the same week. But the homeowner had an apartment where they were going to stay separate to the house. So they came anyway and had their break. But everybody was in residence and they didn't mind. So every situation is unique. You can't say it's a broad brush, this person's fault or this person's fault. It has happened to us where the house sitter has called me from the queue getting on the airplane saying, my back has just gone. I can't get on the plane and has been taken away by ambulance. And then the homeowner is stranded. So we send out urgent emails to the community. We have a very responsive community. Somebody usually steps forward to help, which is really, really support. And I try and pay back by giving a year's free membership or something like that. Right. So we have a great community.
Yeah. So, and back to, again, that whole you being able to kind of help out in these situations. I'm aware that we're kind of coming to the end of our time a little bit. There are a couple more questions. Someone's asking about sticking in gigs that are easy to get around with public transport. And I think we covered that earlier, which is all about sort of finding the location that is best for you. So does HouseSit Match have many homeowners in Canada?
We have some homeowners, but they're very quiet at the moment. And we were quite badly affected by Brexit and by COVID, one after the other. But we are rebuilding again. And we'd like to encourage homeowners in Canada. So if you know anybody, please bring them on board. I'd love to talk to them, even just answer any questions without obligation.
And the question is, average age of the sitter, and do homeowners make a decision based on age? I'm not sure that that's...
Well, I think, sorry, yes, I'm going to interrupt here again. I think some homeowners do make a decision based on age, because I hear those conversations.
Right.
I think if you are a single female over 40, you have a good chance of getting a house sit. Likelihood is you have cared for a home, cared for pets, cared for somebody, and you are respectful and you are, straight in your dealings, just because that's the nature of things. But actually also it's worth noting that we market to people generally over 30. Right. We do not market to people under 30. We have not fallen into that trap. We are not selling a free holiday. We are selling a fair exchange. And I think it's all about how you as the house sitter pitch it and how then the homeowner perceives it, but how we, the house sitting platform, sell house sitting, and it's about a fair exchange.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. We've got a questions about travel insurance, and I think we covered that a little bit too about, yes, you encourage everyone. Well, I would never travel without travel insurance anywhere, whether I was house sitting or otherwise. So yes, I think the answer, we're all nodding, yes, we would all recommend travel insurance. And sorry, I'm just looking at this one here about, do you have homeowners needing parrot, house sitters, or other exotic animals other than cats and dogs? What a great question.
Yes. We do have parrots. In fact, parrots are the most common birds, I have to say. We have had snakes and we've had tarantulas. Not often.
Not anything I'm doing.
No, I'm not trying to be tarantulas, snakes. No,
it's mostly, unusual pets are mostly horses and donkeys. But even then, we don't get many of those. We are mainly cats, dogs, rabbits, and guinea pigs. Guinea pigs are popular.
All right, good to know. Good to know. So, question: you shared some jobs are paid and some are not. Why would a house sitter do it for free?
Well, I can tell you why I would do it for free, because it gives me an opportunity to travel to countries where I couldn't get a work permit.
Right.
And I have a chance to have some extraordinary. Can I tell my story about Réunion?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Please
so one of my favorite house sits of all time was in Réunion, and I know I'm butchering the French. I apologize. It's a French island just just east of Madagascar in the Indian Ocean. And I had a 6-week house sit there. And I asked the homeowner, like I usually do, to introduce me to one of her girlfriends. And so she did. And I met this woman, Anne. We just really hit it off. She showed me all kinds of fun things that I never would have found on my own. And one of the things that she did, it was during migrating season for humpback whales. And so she organized an opportunity for me to be on a Zodiac that a friend of hers had, to go out and snorkel. And I snorkeled with a humpback mama and her baby. And it was, there's just no way I would have ever found that on my own, because it wouldn't have been available to tourists. So it's, you know, I look at house sitting as just such a fantastic opportunity to meet new friends, meet new people, have new experiences in ways that I just couldn't ordinarily. Yeah. So it's really something. I also just, Deborah, if I can just do a quick shout out, one of the resources that I love in house sitting are some of the house sit Facebook groups that are out there. Right. And there's a couple of really good ones. And Sarah Nishina is on our call right now. She's in Hawaii. She admins the one of my favorite groups called House Sitting Cafe. And it's a great group to join. It's a great group to ask questions. It's a great group to just kind of see what house sitters are talking about and what homeowners are talking about. Another one I like is called Compare House Sitting Websites. And it's run by Robin Schultz. It's ROBYN Schultz. And that's another great place to just kind of get a feel for people who have been doing house sitting for a while and what kinds of issues come up and what kinds of things are going on and what kinds of positive and fun things are happening.
Yeah, and the questions keep coming, and thank you for sharing that, because you're kind of answering them as the questions are coming in. We're sort of one step ahead, which is always lovely, isn't it? And just as an FYI, I have put into the chat the link for people if you would like to join HouseSit Match and use the code SOLO25 to get 25% off your annual membership. But one question has just come in as you were talking about your experience with the whales. Do you usually have time to enjoy exploring the location you're visiting? Otherwise, of course, it wouldn't really be worthwhile house sitting. So
right. Yeah, absolutely I do. And that's why I do it for free, because I have these kinds of experiences that I would never have had an opportunity to get otherwise. Yeah. So.
And do you need to speak the language of the country that you are house sitting in? Oh, that's a good question. There's so many good questions.
That is a really good question. I will say that I think every single house sit I've done, every single one has been for an English speaking expat. So either, international teacher or somebody working in the international field, well, with the exception of the UK, right? They're not expats, but they speak English. So I think being able to speak the same language as the homeowners is the really critical thing.
Right.
Because I've certainly house sitting here in Portugal. I don't speak Portuguese yet.
Right.
So, yeah. But everybody I've house sat for are expats and they speak English.
Yeah. And somebody's asking, Lisa is asking if it's unusual to get house sitting as a Swedish person. I don't think that would make any particular difference if you would just apply, right, Lamia?
No, absolutely not. Why would it? No.
Yeah,
absolutely.
no, I think it's all good. Someone's asking again for the Facebook groups that you just mentioned, Kelly.
Sure. Sarah, do you want to put in the chat your she said she's kind of going in and out here. Let me just see.
Yes. Someone's asking for the promo link and the code again. So there's the link and the code is SOLO25. I'll send an email out to everybody with it all in. But I'm just aware that we're sort of coming to the end of our time. Here's a great question. Do you need a visa after a certain time? I guess that's depends where you're going and where you're from.
Yeah. You need to check your destination very carefully. Your passport should have 6 months at least to go before expiration. You really do need to check these details before you go. On HouseSit Match, we have a whole bunch of pages about this kind of information with links to different countries so you can check your visa requirements for your country. So I think it's really important you do that research ahead of time. Don't get stuck in the queue and then get deported. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of wonderful comments coming in. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I feel like the questions have just kept coming. It's just, and everything has been absolutely so relevant and so spot on. So thank you, everybody. And I know we've mentioned your book. Would you like to show your book quickly so that people
sure.
can have a see what the cover looks like? And it's available on Amazon. I will put the title in the link that I'm sending out.
It's very cleverly titled, How to Become a House Sitter, Insider Tips from the House Sit Diva. And this includes a quiz, Is House Sitting Right for Me, as well as all kinds of tips on not only how to get a house sit, but how to succeed in the house sit and how to get a repeat and how to get a good review.
Yeah.
So lots in there. So yes, it's available as an ebook. As a Kindle or as a regular soft cover book on Amazon. Thanks, Deborah. I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem at all.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all about sharing information. And of course, we've got a promotion, which we'd love you all to take up. But let's say it's all about sharing the knowledge and the excitement and the enthusiasm. Someone's saying, please, can you show that again? Maybe they didn't get a chance to. I'll put it in. It's the name of Kelly's book is going in the email. Along with the link to sign up. And Lamia, thank you so much as well for, I have got to know you a little bit more as we've been working on this. And I'm so excited. I think your just your passion for it, but also the care that you bring and this whole community and this understanding of being able to help, especially our community, the over 50 solo travelers, I think is fantastic. So
my pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And yeah, thanks everybody else for joining us. There's lots of messages. I think they are just still saying thank you. So we appreciate all of that lovely feedback. And I say, look out for the recording. I should get it out yet tonight. I will do this evening. And thanks again, Kelly. Thank you, Lamia. I think it's just been a great opportunity to connect with so many people and to share the joy of house sitting. So let's hope we all get some fabulous house sits all over the world.
So Carla is saying, if we do this again, we can invite potential homeowners who are interested. And that's really important that as you talk about house sitting, talk about it to your pet owning friends, because we need everybody to join to make it
You're
all
right.
work.
It's not just people who want to sit, it's people who who have homes as well. Absolutely. That
would be great.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Look out for the recording and stay tuned for when we do our next one. Once we kind of got our breath after this. Thanks.
Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Happy 4th of July to
yes.
Is it today? Was that yesterday? Okay. Thanks.